baby cries in the night, held not by its mother, but by 5 elderly men standing at the edge of a mountain gorge. They inspect its limbs, its eyes, its chest. One nod means life, one gesture means the child falls into darkness. This was not cruelty in their eyes. This was duty. How do you build warriors so fearless that 300 of them can hold off an empire? The answer begins before birth, and it is more calculated than you ever imagined. Ancient Sparta was not a city. It was a war machine disguised as a society, located in the southern Peloponnese region of Greece from roughly 900 BCE to 192 BCE. Every law, every tradition, every family structure existed to produce one product: the perfect soldier. While Athens built theaters and philosophy schools, Sparta built human weapons through a system so extreme that even other Greeks called it barbaric. This story matters now, because Sparta's breeding program was history's first documented attempt at state-controlled eugenics. It influenced Nazi ideology, modern military psychology, and every fictional super soldier program you've ever seen on screen. Understanding what they actually did, not the myth, reveals how societies justify the unthinkable when survival feels absolute. The system began with marriage, but not as you know it. Spartan men could not marry until aged 30. And even then, they lived in military barracks, not homes. The wedding night itself was a rehearsed deception. The bride had her head shaved and was dressed in men's clothing, then left alone in a dark room. The groom would sneak away from his barracks, consummate the marriage in darkness, and return before dawn. This was not romance. This was breeding protocol designed to keep male soldiers bonded to their units, not their wives. Pregnancy was monitored by the state. Women were expected to exercise, wrestle, and run, even while carrying children. Based on the belief that strong mothers produced strong sons, there were no private family decisions. The child belonged to Sparta before it took its first breath. When labor began, there were no midwives offering comfort. There were state officials preparing for inspection. Birth triggered the first selection. Within hours of delivery, the infant was taken from its mother and brought before the Gerousia, a council of 28 elders plus 2 kings. They examined the baby under torchlight. They looked for deformities, weak muscle tone, poor reflexes, or any sign of physical imperfection. If the child passed, it was returned to the mother. If it failed, the law was clear. The baby was carried to a chasm called the Apothetai, located on Mount Taygetos, and abandoned. For centuries, historians debated whether this actually happened or was Greek propaganda. Then in the 1990s, researchers found human infant remains at the base of the mountain, though the numbers were smaller than ancient sources claimed. Documents: University of Athens Archaeological Study, 1998. The practice was real, but likely less systematic than myth suggests. Some families may have hidden weak children. Some may have been exposed elsewhere. The state's control was absolute in theory, inconsistent in practice. If the child survived inspection, it remained with its mother until age 7. But this was not a normal childhood. Spartan mothers were trained to show no affection, no coddling, no comfort for pain source. Plutarch's description of Spartan women's conduct: the goal was emotional hardening. A mother who wept over her son's injury was publicly shamed. A mother who celebrated her son's military death was honored. The state was teaching both mother and child the same lesson: your life is not your own. At age 7, the Agoge began. This was Sparta's mandatory military education system, and it was where the breeding program's second phase started source. Multiple classical sources, including Plutarch and Zeno. Boys were taken from their families and placed in communal barracks. They were underfed deliberately, forced to steal food to survive, and beaten if caught. Not because theft was wrong, but because getting caught showed poor tactical skill. They slept on beds of reeds. They gathered themselves. They bathed in cold rivers. Your weakness was punished by peers, not instructors. The strong survived. The weak were culled through social Darwinism. But the Agoge was more than boot camp. It included a secret element that ancient sources barely mention and modern scholars debate: the Krypteia source. Plato's laws, Plutarch's writings. Once a year, the strongest young men were sent into the countryside at night, armed with daggers, with orders to hunt and kill the enslaved population that outnumbered Spartans 7-1. This was not warfare. This was sanctioned murder designed to eliminate fear of killing and to terrorize the Helot population into submission. The breeding program did not just create bodies. It created minds capable of killing without hesitation. Agoge. 20 young men faced another selection. They applied to join a Sycesia, a military dining club that would become their second family source. Plutarch's accounts, membership required unanimous approval from current members. If even one man voted no by breaking his bread in half instead of whole, the applicant was rejected and became a social outcast, unable to marry or hold citizenship. This was social eugenics. The system filtered not just physical strength, but personality, loyalty, and conformity. Those who questioned, who hesitated, who showed too much individuality were removed from the breeding pool. Women faced their own selection pressures. Spartan women were the only Greek women who exercised publicly, owned property, and chose their own husbands from approved candidates. But this freedom had a purpose. The state wanted women strong enough to bear healthy children and independent enough to run estates while men lived in barracks. Weak women, infertile women, women who bore only daughters were socially marginalized. Marriage was a privilege earned by genetic fitness. The program even engineered adultery. If a Spartan man was old or weak, he was encouraged to invite a younger, stronger man to impregnate his wife. The resulting child was legally the husband's, but genetically superior. Jealousy was trained out of a culture. Bloodline purity mattered less than physical outcome. This was selective breeding made socially acceptable through patriotic duty. Br. Krypteia. Spartan man, who passed all tests, became a homoiou, a full citizen and equal source. Classical terminology recorded in multiple sources. He could finally live with his wife part-time, though he still ate and trained with his unit. He was expected to father multiple children. If he had 3 sons, he was exempt from military service. If he had 4, he was exempt from taxes. The state was optimizing reproduction rates among proven genetic stock. Our primary sources for Spartan breeding practices come from non-Spartan writers, which creates immediate bias. Sparta itself left almost no written records. These authors admired Spartan discipline but also viewed them as strange and extreme. Plutarch, our most detailed source, wrote his accounts over 500 years after Sparta's peak, relying on earlier sources now lost. This is like writing about medieval Europe using only Renaissance texts. Archaeological evidence confirms some practices and contradicts others. Infant remains found at Taygetos prove exposure happened, but in smaller numbers than literary sources claim. Skeletal remains of adult Spartans show evidence of childhood malnutrition and bone stress consistent with extreme training, supporting Agoge descriptions, but no physical evidence confirms the Krypteia death squads existed as described. Contemporary sources from other Greek city-states reference Spartan breeding practices with mixture of horror and respect. They accuse Spartans of treating humans like livestock. Spartans did not deny this. They argued it was necessary for survival, surrounded by enemies and outnumbered by their own enslaved population. Both perspectives are documented. Neither can be dismissed as pure propaganda. Modern scholars debate nearly every aspect of the Spartan system. Some historians argued the breeding program was exaggerated by Athenian rivals to make Spartans seem barbaric, justifying Athens' own imperialism. Academic debate. Various papers from 1980s 2000s questioning traditional narratives. Others point to Sparta's consistent military dominance for 3 centuries as proof the system worked as described. Both sides have evidence. Neither has conclusive proof. The biggest gap is female perspective. All surviving accounts were written by men, mostly nonsense. We have almost no record of what Spartan women actually thought about surrendering their babies for inspection or raising children they knew might be killed in training. Did they believe in the system? Did they resist privately? We simply do not know. Ancient sources present them as willing participants, but these sources also had political reasons to portray Spartan society as unified and efficient. The Krypteia remains the most controversial element. Some scholars argue it was a coming-of-age ritual that did not actually involve murder, just survival training in hostile territory. Academic position held by some classical historians. Others point to multiple ancient references, describing it explicitly as sanctioned killing of helots. Thucydides, generally considered the most reliable ancient historian, describes one incident where Sparta killed 2,000 helots under false pretenses, suggesting the culture of killing enslaved people was real source. Thucydides' History. Book 4. The children who failed inspection died before they could form memories, but their mothers remembered. Spartan women were trained to accept this as duty, but human grief does not follow training. We have no letters, no diaries, no private moments recorded. What we have is a system that required mothers to perform strength while experiencing loss. The psychological cost of that performance is absent from historical record, but basic human nature suggests it was enormous. The boys who entered the Agoge at 7 experienced institutionalized abuse that would be illegal in every modern nation. They were starved, beaten, and taught to value violence over empathy. Many died during training from exposure, malnutrition, or injuries that went untreated as part of hardening protocols. Source: references in Plutarch to training deaths, exact numbers unknown. Those who survived became extraordinarily effective soldiers, but ancient sources also describe them as emotionally stunted, unable to adapt to peacetime, and prone to cruelty, even by ancient standards. The Helots, the enslaved majority, lived in constant terror of the Krypteia and other Spartan violence. They were Greek ethnically, often descended from conquered cities, and were treated as permanent enemies within Sparta's own borders. The breeding program's success required their oppression. Every perfect Spartan warrior was sustained by the labor and fear of 7 enslaved people. That ratio was not sustainable, and ultimately, Helot revolts contributed to Sparta's decline. Think of Sparta as a 700-year genetic experiment with one hypothesis: extreme selection pressure produces superior soldiers. By modern standards, it worked. Spartan warriors were demonstrably more effective pound for pound than any contemporary force. The Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE, where 300 Spartans held off perhaps 100,000 Persians for 3 days, was not myth source. Herodotus' account. Numbers disputed but event confirmed by Persian records. It was the predictable result of multi-generational optimization for combat traits. But the experiment proved something else. Specialized breeding creates specialized fragility. Spartans were exceptional soldiers but terrible at everything else. They produced almost no art, literature, philosophy, or technological innovation. Source: comparative analyses of classical Greek contributions to culture. When warfare evolved beyond hoplite formations, they could not adapt. When their enslaved population finally revolted successfully, they could not rebuild. They optimized for one trait at the expense of societal resilience. Modern genetics explains what Spartans intuited. Strong selection pressure increases desired traits, but also increases hidden genetic vulnerabilities through reduced diversity. Animal breeding programs see this constantly. Grass horses are fast but fragile. Purebred dogs have health problems. Spartan society experienced social and economic brittleness that pure military strength could not overcome. They won battles, but lost the civilization game to more diverse, adaptable neighbors. The broader lesson echoes through history. Nazi Germany studied Spartan eugenics explicitly and replicated its atrocities with industrial efficiency. Historical record. Nazi references to Sparta in educational materials and SS training. Modern military special forces training draws from Agoge principles, minus the murder and childhood abuse, proving some elements work when ethically constrained. The question is never whether selective pressure produces results. It is whether those results justify the human cost, and whether the results remain useful when conditions change. Here is what we know. Sparta ran a multi-generational breeding program that combined extreme childhood training, state-controlled reproduction, and social eugenics. The system produced history as most effective pre-modern soldiers through methods that were shocking even to other ancient Greeks. Archaeological and textual evidence confirms the broad outline, though specific details remain debated. Here's what we do not know: exact numbers of children killed, whether the Krypteia was as brutal as described, how much coercion versus cultural belief motivated participation, and what Spartan women actually thought. We are viewing this system through the biased lens of non-Spartan writers and the incomplete lens of archaeology. What we can trace is the legacy. Sparta fell around 192 BCE when Rome conquered Greece. But the idea of Sparta never died. It became a template for every authoritarian society that wanted to justify genetic control in the name of strength. For historical understanding, high confidence that more archaeological work at Taygetos and Spartan gravesites will refine our knowledge of what actually happened versus what was reported. New skeletal analysis techniques and DNA studies of ancient remains may reveal health outcomes, genetic diversity, and cause of death data impossible to get from texts alone. For modern parallels, medium confidence that military organizations will continue studying Spartan training methods for psychological insights, though ethical limits prevent direct replication. Special Forces selection already uses multi-phase filtering and extreme stress, just without the childhood component or breeding element. For cultural influence, high confidence that Sparta will remain a symbol manipulated by different political movements. Currently, far-right groups romanticize it as racial purity mythology, while fitness culture uses it as motivation branding. Neither representation is historically accurate, but both are culturally persistent. Expect this to continue until better historical education becomes widespread. Sparta did not fail because their breeding program did not work. It failed because they built a society that could only do one thing perfectly: And history does not reward single-purpose civilizations. The warriors they created were real. The cost was also real. The question is not whether extreme methods produce extreme results, but whether those results matter when the world changes faster than genetics can adapt. If this story made you think about how societies shape people versus how people shape societies, watch our next video. How Rome conquered Greece militarily, but Greece conquered Rome culturally. It explores what happened when Sparta's warrior culture met a civilization built on adaptability instead of purity.